Well, hello, all my amazingly beautiful zodiac family and friends. My name is Libra Empress, and this is another episode of Terror and Tarot with Libra Empress. Today we are going to be watching 3 Summer Camp Horror Stories Animated by IMR Entertainment. Without further ado, let's get started, shall we?
I'm sorry if this post is too long, but I've never shared this with anyone, and this seems like the best place to do so. When I was around 9, I went to summer camp at the nearby YMCA for a few summers. It was a day camp, and there were different camps you could do, such as water sports, crafts, canoeing. Each camp lasted for about 1 week. I started the summer by taking one of the craft camps, a special one that lasted 2 weeks. I was really excited about it, but I was nervous because I didn't know anyone else in my group, and I'm very shy. In the first day, I managed to make friends with an older kid who was in a wheelchair. He was 17, I believe. I'm not sure what his disability was, but he was socially awkward and kind of gave off a creepy vibe. I tried my best to be nice to him, because nobody else talked to him, but eventually he started to make me uncomfortable. First, he'd start by talking about how much he hated being in the wheelchair because it made his back hurt. He liked to be able to get out at the end of the day and stretch, as well as do some exercises with his physical therapist. I'd just smile and nod as he talked about this, not knowing what else to say. At some point, I mentioned to him how I was a dancer and really liked acrobatics class. He asked me to show him some of my moves, so I did a cartwheel. He told me that my legs looked beautiful when I stretched them out like that. Being a kid, I didn't think much of the comment, but I started getting uncomfortable when he began telling me how much he liked my hair, or how white my teeth were, or how cute I was because I was so little. One day, he was talking about stretching outside of his wheelchair and mentioned how good it would feel if someone were to walk on his back. You'd be perfect, just the right size. Would you do that for me one day? I'd love to have you on top of me. He smiled creepily when he said this, so I awkwardly changed the direction of the conversation by telling him how I used to do that for my dad. I was young and stupid, and probably shouldn't have told him that. He got really excited and started talking about how much he loved it, and how good it must have felt for my dad. I bet he loves having his little girl on top of him like that. He reached out to me at this point, and put his hand on my knee. We were sitting by a table in the craft cabin. I awkwardly shoved it off, moving away a little. He smiled and started talking about how good it would feel if I were to do cartwheels on his back and jump on him, maybe even lay down on top of him and rub his sides. I got really uncomfortable at this point, and luckily, my mom drove up a moment later, so I was ready to leave. This was on the weekend, and the camp was going to continue to the following Monday. I didn't mention anything to my mom, because I figured he was just lonely and awkward, and didn't mean to be creepy. But when I got to the camp Monday, he immediately came up to me. I was so upset that I couldn't see you this weekend. I missed my little girl. I smiled and awkwardly walked away, but he followed me. We were all going as a group to the craft cabin, and he came up next to me and asked if I wanted to sit in his lap and ride to the cabin with him. I politely declined and managed to avoid him for the rest of the day, until I was walking to my mom's car at the end of the day. He came up to me, grabbed my hand, and pulled me towards him. You really hurt me today. How would you like it if I hurt you? I yanked my hand away and walked quickly to the car. I told my mom all about it as soon as I got in the car. She immediately drove over to the camp office and spoke with the camp leader about it, who I shared my story with. He assured us that he would take care of it immediately. As we were driving away after the meeting, I saw 2 counselors go up to the boy and lead him into the camp office. The look on his face looked like he was going to murder someone. I never saw him again after that. I was told that he was kicked out of the camp and never allowed to return. And for the rest of the week, the camp counselors would check on me and make sure I was okay. So, creepy boy from summer camp, I hope you got your issues worked out, and that you're finally living a happy life now. This is my first post here. This experience still gives me chills to this day. I actually have a few other camp encounters that I can share if anyone's interested, mainly occurring along the Appalachian Trail with campers. North Georgia is a mighty interesting place. A few years ago, I worked at a Jewish summer camp in North Georgia. As many of you might know, Georgia is a fairly conservative state, as well as being predominantly Christian. There are small Jewish communities and a few summer camps. I'd say this camp was more culturally Jewish than it was religious. There were no religious requirements, nor religion-specific focus. Rather, it was a place for kids who were often in the minority to come to a camp that allowed them to meet some other kids like them. Staff came from all over. We had many Australians, lots of Brits, a few Israelis, and people from various areas of the USA. Each night around 10, most of the staff was able to go out on the town for a couple of hours. Enough staff remained behind to watch over the cabins. We rotated. This particular night, a group of about 5 of us decided to go to a local bar to grab a few beers. It had been a hot day and was a humid night, so we decided to sit outside on the patio. For some backstory on the town, generally, we were extremely well received by the community, despite some differences. We brought in lots of revenue for the town during the summer. We bought supplies at the local Walmart, and often took the campers on tubing trips or occasionally out to dinner after a long hike on the Appalachian Trail. It was midsummer, so we'd been out to the bars in the area many times already that session. The 5 of us sat around a table, drinking and discussing the events of the day, as fellow employees typically would after work. About 30 minutes in, a white man in his 20s came up to our table. I distinctly remember a jagged scar on his cheek, but didn't think much of it at the time. He introduced himself, then told us that he was having a party that night at his place. "Anyone can come," he said. Black, white, gay, straight. I found it odd that he'd open his speech with that disclaimer. Of course the party should be open to everyone. Why did he feel the need to specify? But we'd all had a few beers at that point, and were feeling pretty loose. He talked for a bit longer, and nothing really seemed off. We told him we were working at a camp in the area, and couldn't stay out, so we'd probably be heading back soon. An hour later, our group went out to the parking lot to get into the car. As we approached it, we saw the same guy come out of the shadows. He had a buddy with him, with a shaved head. His expression was incredibly hateful. His eyes had changed. He pounded his fist into his hand, then took off his shirt and revealed a poorly inked SS tattoo. My stomach dropped. One of the bigger guys in my group, Kevin, immediately reacted by pulling a knife out of his back pocket. At summer camp, most of us staff carried knives. We spent a lot of time building campfires and the like, and asked what they wanted. The original guy started shouting some anti-Semitic remarks and told us he was going to beat us down. Kevin started walking toward the 2 guys, but we pulled him back. He told us his buddies were on the way. Sure enough, some more guys started walking into the parking lot. It's all kind of blurry from there. I remember jumping into one of the cars, pulling Kevin with us. It felt like we were surrounded, though there were probably only 7 or 8 of them. Rocks were thrown at the car, and we sped off. My heart was beating like crazy. We never went back to that bar. On the bright side, when we told the story to the competing bar in town, the bartender lined up 6 shots, cheersed us, and said we'd always be welcome in his bar in that town. Had no more problems in the town itself, but when I took some campers up on a 2-day hike up the Appalachian Trail, that was another story. I began working at a summer camp several years ago. I had a history as a camper at this camp, and I loved the place. By the time I was 19, I had done what I never imagined I'd do, and became the camp's one and only medic. As medic, I no longer hung out with counselors and the other younger staff as much. If I had free time, I spent it helping out in the kitchen. This year, there was kind of a big turnover in staff. A longtime cook moved on from camp, and no one was hired over the year as a replacement. So come summertime, we were scrambling to find someone to cover that position. I met 2 of the interviewees. One a middle-aged woman who, in my humble opinion, seemed like the perfect get-it-done kind of person you'd need as a cook. The other, a tall man, mid-40s, with piercings galore, and a loud look-at-me personality. The woman I fancied was not chosen. I think my boss was upset by her surprise when she saw how small our kitchen was, 2 ovens to feed 150 people. And the camp was introduced to our new cook, Chef Vincent. Everybody loved Chef Vincent, except for me. The instant I met him, I got chills down my spine. You know when you hear a strange sound in the dark, and your body is screaming at you to run or hide or something? That's how I felt every second I was in the meal hall or the kitchen. Soon, the places that have been like a second home to me were feeling less comfortable and more get me the fuck out of here creepy. Chef Vincent was abrasive. My first time talking to him, he said something like, "That's your medic?" in response to my color-dyed hair. He tried to be fancy, but his meals were dull and soggy. After watching him prepare one, I stopped eating them altogether. I don't think the man had gone to school in his life, let alone taken a food safety course. I survived off an occasional bite of safe food on the table, like packaged crackers, bread, things he hadn't handled directly, and a storage of cheap meal replacement drinks in my room. It sucked. I'm an extremely protective person, especially of my younger coworkers who were basically family to me. Chef Vincent's kitchen staff were 16 or 17-year-olds, and I was afraid for them. I'd watch from outside the kitchen and talk to them discreetly, making sure everything was okay. Honestly, at this point I was worried that I was being unfair since everybody else loved him. Maybe I was the one being a creep. But I couldn't get over the comments he made and the way he talked to me. He would touch my shoulder and stand all tall and lean over me when he talked. He told me about his kids and how they have to stay with their grandma now, and about his many years of experience, which I always suspected were due to being a prison cook or something like that. He was extremely arrogant. I wanted to punch him, to be honest, but eventually I just stopped going in the kitchen and even stayed away from the mess hall, unless others were in there with me. If he tried to talk to me, which he did often at night on the deck, I ignored him and left the room. But I still thought I was being a bitch, to be honest. Then Chef Vincent told one of the kitchen staff to really molest that, in reference to stirring a pot or whatever. One member of the kitchen staff came to me crying about how much he was pushing them in the kitchen. Soon, all 3 kitchen staff were describing incidents of complete disrespect, his refusal to learn their names, use of inappropriate words, and calling them his little girls, and the boy, John, Jack, Jehovah, whatever. This pushed me until I told the boss about how uncomfortable this man made me. I didn't bring the kitchen staff into it, since I advised them to tell the boss on their own. Then one day, A fellow staff member came up and said that Chef Vincent said I won't stop following him and that I should be dating him. Confused and angry, I followed up with another staff member, who said the chef was talking about the camp dog. Still concerned, I continued with my day when Chef Vincent came to me and told me the story, laughing with a hand on my shoulder the whole time. I said, "You must really like me." He also made veiled sexual innuendos constantly. Oh yeah, I like things hot, and complimented me, like more than is appropriate. I got chills every time. Fuck off, dude. This has been going on for a week. In the second week, I'm asleep in the medic's cabin. It's got a bedroom separated from the rest of the office by an unlockable door, and I'm the only one who stays there. My nights are long, lots of sick campers and whatnot. This particular night, it's 4 a.m., and I've finally gotten to bed after being up for an hour with a sick kid. I'm exhausted, and I'm asleep the second my head hits the pillow. 2 hours later, I'm awakened by a loud thumping on my door. Usually staff use the walkie-talkie to contact me, even at night, so I'm pretty concerned and I crawl out of bed and head to the door. It's Chef Vincent. I hesitate, not wanting to open the door for him, so he hammers on it again. He looks angry. I'm angry. It's 6 a.m. What the fuck does he want? Finally, I open the door just a crack and look out. He's loud. I have to do laundry. My office houses the washer and dryer for the camp because I do laundry when kids wet the beds. So every morning, laundry is reserved and staff needs to ask me to use it. This particular week, we'd had water problems, and the laundry couldn't be done, so I had a lineup of camper things needing to be washed. And here he was, 6 a.m., demanding to use the thing. When I pointed out the water issues and how camper stuff comes first, he got aggressive and yanked the door open. He's big and intimidating, and I stepped backward to avoid him, and he looked at me and said, "I'm the important one around here." I went cold. It was 6 a.m. I had just been told by a creature from the depths that I, who had worked at the camp for 5 years, was unimportant compared to him. It's hard to convey body language secondhand, but he was aggressive to the degree that I flew past my usual response to this kind of situation, anger, and went straight to fearing for my safety. I can be an anxious person, but I don't get genuinely frightened by a lot other than horror movies. So what scared me more was how scared I was. Hair on end, adrenaline pumping scared. His gaze was absolutely predatory. There was nothing about his presence that made me think he saw me as more than something to be toyed with. At this point, my mouth was opening, and I knew I'd say something I'd regret saying, especially locked in this building alone with the one man who creeped the shit out of me from the second I'd met him. So I forced out one word. "Okay," and backed my way into my room. He watched me the whole time. I go to my room, and the tears push behind my eyes, but I'm too tired for them to actually come. I'm tired of this frustration, of this anger, this fear. I'd warned my boss about him. Boss was always saying, "Listen to your gut," and I was. But did they do anything about it? No. I pushed a chair against the doorknob, not knowing if it actually works to lock doors like it does in the movies, and curled up in my bed. I told my boss the following morning, and they called it inappropriate and said it wouldn't happen again, but that was all I heard of it. For the next week, I lived in constant anxiety, which meant puking a lot and hiding in my room. When he talked to me, he had a smile that would make even the most daft of people pause for concern. While before this I had attempted to be polite, I always left from then on. That week, or maybe the next, it all blurs together at this point. All of the staff were upstairs, save for a few staff monitoring kids in their cabins. I was called over by a fellow upper-level staff member who informed me that Chef Vincent had been fired. His police check, which they hadn't decided to do until after he was hired, had come back. He didn't pass his vulnerable sector check, aka he was not allowed to work with or volunteer with kids in any capacity due to prior crimes that I'll let you mull over. Camp was effectively on lockdown while he was to vacate the premises. I lost it then. Tears came and wouldn't stop, and I couldn't breathe. My whole body went fuzzy, and as I was led out of the building by another upper-level staff member, where I managed to gargle out something along the lines of, "He made me so anxious, and no one else saw it. I'm just so relieved." The panic attack lasted for a solid 30 minutes. When I saw him exit the building with his belongings, I hid in my office. When I finally came out, he was gone. They kept this all under wraps. They didn't tell the kids the cook had gone. Didn't tell the parents, just in case something had happened. My boss didn't even tell the board of directors. It was a huge liability. Still is. And while I'm glad that my anxieties about this man were completely justified, I'm filled with anger over the fact that he was hired without a criminal record check and the fact that my feelings were repeatedly dismissed. Camp went from being the only place in this world where I felt completely safe and comfortable to a strange place where I felt like I was living a nightmare. I felt inadequate and constantly upset. It's funny how having your fears ignored can make you feel like there's something wrong with you. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I quit on account of my mental health so I could see a professional more often. I still have fears about that man finding me, which I feel is irrational because he never actually abused me or anything. He just made me shit myself with anxiety and was incredibly aggressive and over-sexual. My parents joke about it being a Cape Fear kind of situation, and laughing about it makes it feel better, but only for a little bit. I don't think anyone realizes just how terrified I was. To this day, I still am.
That was 3 summer camp horror stories animated by IMR Entertainment. They were really good. Right now, I have 5 cards I pulled from the dead spread. Alright? The first card I got here represents the person. It tells me they were a fire sign. They were very fiery, right? Self-sacrificial. Could have been a nurse at one point. Looking back on their life and how they see it, they saw that their family, including themselves, was very dysfunctional. Yeah, very dysfunctional. And that's okay. We all have a dysfunctional family. Nobody's perfect. If it's perfect, you guys are robots. Like, it's just saying if it's too perfect. A lesson that that they'd like to share is that sometimes you have to sever some ties in order to make some real progress. Now, they're not saying to sever ties with your dysfunctional family. But if you can't fix it, then you gotta do you. Peace of mind, right? Now, something they wish they had paid more attention to is birthdays, celebrations, rewards, their skills. They didn't celebrate a whole lot in their life. They were constantly working. A message they'd like to give you is this: you're going to get negative feedback. That's just how life is sometimes. It's good, constructive feedback, and sometimes people are just assholes. Okay? It's like when your mom tells you you're the best singer in the whole wide world, right? And you believe it, and then you go on to American Idol, and Simon Cowell's he's gone deaf because of how bad your singing was. And Paula is like, Well, that was very good. Finally, someone made Simon go deaf, right? And in reality, you're like, oh God, am I gonna have to pay for his medical bills? Like, my mom lied to, what the fuck, right? It's like that. You need to, you don't need to do anything, but you're gonna get negative feedback. You're gonna realize as you grow older, or as time goes on, that you're not as perfect as everybody thinks. Like, everybody seems to think that they're like perfect, right? But we're all flawed, and that's what makes us beautiful. We're very imperfectly perfect in our own way. So there's the thing, is that people are going to give you negative feedback. Don't take it to heart. Try to take that stone they throw at you and use it to step up and build yourself. I don't know, like a castle, whatever you can build stones out of. Make a fireplace. Fuck, I don't know. What I do know is that this isn't going to hold you back, and they're telling you it's not going to hold you back. Just know that you're going to be just fine. All right. I love you all. Thank you so much for listening to me. My name is Libra Empress. Please don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you for next week's Terror and Tarot with me, Libra Empress. I love you. Bye, my beautiful friends. Stay safe.